Hello, everybody. I am Val Thompson, host for iFocus podcast. Today, I'm very excited about this episode because I'm interviewing one of our own, the Honorable Cynthia L. Blandford. She is executive producer for iFocus podcast, as well as managing director for Blandford Thompson International Business Consulting and the Atlanta publisher for the International Focus magazine. So, Cynthia Blandford, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Val. How are you? Good to see you. In Houston, I know it's hot, and it's hot in Atlanta too. Hot Atlanta.
Oh, it's hot Atlanta? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
it is.
Okay, but this is the big H. This is Houston.
There you go.
So let's jump right into it. First, why don't you tell us a little something about yourself and provide us with a sneak peek into your memoirs, because this is about your memoirs, and I think the title is "My Heart Bleeds for Africa." Not bleeds. My heart beats. My heart beats for Africa. How the love for the motherland led me to a life of purpose. So, tell us about your story and a little bit about your background.
Well, thanks, Val, and to all of you in the listening audience, just thank you for the opportunity. I'm just so excited to share with you a piece of my life. So, as you can imagine, at my age, my tender age, I had to make some decisions about legacy and telling my story. So a few years ago, I did make a really good decision, I think, with the encouragement of my sister Artie Blandford and other friends and family to write my memoirs and to share my unique journey as the first African American woman to serve as the honorary consul for the Republic of Liberia as they were celebrating 173 years of independence. And again, I'm reading from my memoirs. So if you see me looking down, it's because I actually am telling my story from a published document that came out when Val Thompson actually came to Atlanta, Georgia, to put me on the front cover of the If magazine in Houston. And then I did it again in my inaugural series about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So I am honored to be able to share some of my excerpts of my memoirs with you today and my journey from public housing to public diplomacy. My heart beats for Africa, how a love for the motherland led me to a life of purpose. We're always looking for life of purpose. This is a simple story about a little brown-skinned girl who was born in the Jones Court public housing community in Elmira, New York. I grew up also in small town Ithaca, New York, a college town. Born Cynthia Lynn Blandford, better known by her friends and family as Cindy, a curious, green-eyed little girl raised by a single mom to be bold and courageous. She was encouraged, Cindy was. I was inspired as a little girl, prompted by my mother and the community to think big, to give service, and to make an impact on the world. Today, as a woman, Val, on the global stage, as you know a bit about my career, I'm celebrating almost 50 years of my life in love and learning for Africa, particularly for Liberia. So I felt compelled to tell my story, to share my story with you and with others in hopes that I could inspire other young boys and girls of color in particular, and young women all over the world to consider becoming future diplomats, ambassadors, consuls generals, honorary consuls, or to pursue a career in the field of diplomacy, international affairs, in their college studies. So, Val, my life as an honorary consul has been transformative. There's no doubt about it. And for those who are interested in this field of study, they should pursue it with vigor so that one day they may have a prominent place at the global table to help shape the course of history and to make an impact and to serve others. So, as I tell my story as a young girl, I imagined a life where I could be on the international stage, enriched, enlightened, and exposed to a whole world with heads of state, queen mothers, people in commerce and industry, ministers of government, history and culture, and incredible people and places that would shape my thinking for a lifetime. I hope that my story could be a spark, an enlightenment, or an amazing journey for some little boy or girl just like I was. My story, as I said, began in Jones Court in public housing many, many years ago. I was the daughter of a neighborhood community center secretary and a high school basketball player, Ardella, and Billy, where my parents fell in love at a very early age. The young love only lasted a few years, unfortunately, but my mom, courageous as she was, moved to Ithaca, New York, with three small children to begin a new life. Ardella Eunice Blandford, my mom, smart, beautiful, with an exceptional personality, infectious. She only had a high school diploma, yet she moved up the career ladder to success at Cornell University, where she worked as a manager in the personnel department and then became the first African American woman on the board of trustees at Cornell University. She then went on with my stepfather, Joe Wilson, to IBM at, I guess you could say, they started to set up the IBM offices in North Carolina, where they stayed for many years until they retired. My mom left her footprint at IBM as well. My mom, Miss Ardella, or Mommy, as I sometimes affectionately called her, taught us to be fearless, courageous, and to respect one another. She instilled in us Christian moral values, telling us and showing us that we could be anything we wanted to be. My mom, Ardella, was a diplomat in her own right. For example, a short story. When neighborhood kids in Ithaca used to call us the N word, and you know what that means, she would call a meeting in the front yard on Judd Falls Road in Ithaca, New York, and ask the little white kids to come and sit around with her as she told her story. She would teach them why it was wrong to call hurtful names to her children. She was matter of fact in her speech, yet diplomatic with her words. She told those kids to stop being ugly to her children. And then, after hearing her speech, they all scattered, running back to their homes, snickering along the way. Little did I know then that these types of experiences that mommy facilitated and negotiated on the front lawn in front of our house in small town USA, Ithaca, New York, would later serve as a role model for me as I looked at diplomacy and international relations on the world stage. I believe her spirit and her unique skills and her savoir faire was preparing me for a life of purpose with an aim toward life of diplomacy and service. So, Val, as I tell my story as a young country girl growing up in Ithaca, I had the audacity to think I could change the world and that I could be anyone and anything because mommy, Miss Ardella, said I could. With love and the prayers of my ancestors, I was being armored with strength and confidence and a desire to do great things. There was no stopping me.
Let me ask, how did you become an honorary consul?
Well, I guess I could jump on to my other part of my memoirs. I have to say that I believe my appointment was really divine intervention, quite frankly.
Hmm.
I was told that I was destined, based upon my experience at Cornell University with the first Africana Studies Center, all the influence from Black thought leaders and people who came to the Cornell campus for Africana Studies to learn and teach Pan Africanists came and told their stories. So Liberia and Africa became a part of my life when I was as young as 16 years old. So this divine intervention really helped to focus my life from a very early age. So as my heart was still beating for Africa, I found myself yearning. At this time, I was thinking about a Rotarian scholarship. And so I went to Liberia at the age of 18, and I had the distinct honor and pleasure to learn the culture and the people, and Liberia became my second home.
Okay, what does an honorary consul do? And what other services do they provide?
Well, as an honorary consul, we do a number of things. It's just an impressive opportunity to serve and provide leadership to the community. So, in my past experiences as an honorary consul, the Liberian consulate provided visa and consular services to over 25,000 Liberians here in the state of Georgia and all throughout the region and really all throughout the world. With strong partners and a vibrant business community, we supported those who really thought that Liberia, believed Liberia was a go to destination for travel, trade, tourism, and investment. Our work included working with the City of Atlanta, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, and in particular, the Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Through that relationship, we established one of the first sister airport agreements between Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport and the Liberian Airport Authority. And why was that so important? Well, you can only imagine. If you have Liberians here in Georgia and almost probably a quarter of a million plus throughout the United States, people want to get home, people want to travel, they want to visit their families, they want to go for graduation and weddings. So it became an opportunity to work with Delta Airlines also on direct flights to Liberia. It was an amazing experience. And so, excuse me, in addition to the sister airport agreement, we also have a sister port agreement between the National Port Authority of Liberia as well as the Georgia Ports Authority. And that allows for trade to increase between the two port cities. We can do a little bit better sending items out of Liberia to the United States. We're working on those particulars now through AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act. But we believe that trade will increase between Liberia and Georgia in the very, very short term. So my job is to make sure that we encourage travel, trade, and tourism.
Okay, so how could the Liberian business community help? Can they help anyhow to work with Americans that are interested in doing business in Liberia?
Well, of course.
Is there an opportunity? Is there an opportunity for the Liberian business community to help you?
Well,
Is it
clearly.
possible?
Oh, it's always possible. Anything is possible. I mean, I just believe that we've done almost 50 trade missions to Liberia.
Okay.
We've done investment missions. We've done education missions through our nonprofit called the University Consortium for Liberia. We have done, I guess you might say, tourism visits. In fact, we came back, as you already know, the 200th anniversary, the bicentennial of the founding of the first free or independent nation on the continent, Liberia. We celebrated the bicentennial last year, and hundreds of people went to Liberia to celebrate the country. So there are opportunities to invest. Liberia is known for its rubber, one of the oldest plantations, I guess you might call, but more rubber than any other place in the world, I think outside of Indonesia, is found in Liberia, rubber. We're looking at ways to source and manufacture rubber in Liberia so that we'll have opportunities to have gloves and condoms and plastic products that are important for basic needs of the community. So there are ways not only through rubber, but there's also a budding opportunity through natural hair products. Shea Butter is also doing some great work, Shea Butter Moisturizer, through hair care products, facial products. There's an opportunity for renewable energy. Liberia has one of the last remaining rainforests. And so there's a huge opportunity when you look at climate change to understand the importance of water and energy that Liberia could offer the world. So if you look at all those dynamics, agriculture, we are now an exporter of cocoa, giving Cote d'Ivoire a run for their money, so to speak. And so we're exporting cocoa, which I think is really, really exciting. We have great leadership with Minister Molly Cooper in the Ministry of Agriculture. So there's some great ways for people to invest, to be a part of the growth of this nation, and we certainly hope that people will join us.
I heard that there were some award-winning honey, and I love honey. So tell me about that honey. I heard there was some award-winning honey. I think it's called Liberian honey, and I've sampled it, and it is great. So there's honey products, and there's also rice. There's opportunity in rice in the Republic of Liberia as well. So any other products?
Well, actually, we both had an opportunity to work with,
Right,
I think, a great entrepreneur, Gladys Freeman, and she
right,
is the entrepreneur we all know now with Liberia Pure
right.
honey on the
Oh,
world
okay.
stage. Yeah, on the world stage
Yeah.
in the UK a few years ago, Liberia Pure honey received an international award as one of the best honeys in the world. So I think that's exciting. I've tasted it. You've tasted others. It is
Right,
a phenomenal honey, and we're
right.
excited to be partnering with them. Not only do they do honey, they do coconut oils for hair and body. They also do honey candles, which are very
Mm,
impressive. So we're very excited about what the honey product can do, and just in terms of the natural components of honey and the
mhm.
benefits of honey. But hopefully one day we'll figure out how we can export containers of honey so we can get them on the shelves here in
Right.
America and throughout the world.
Right. What about I was reading something about the ports in Liberia, and I think they have 4 ports. And what's interesting is there's a lot of development that could take place there. Are you familiar with the ports anyway? Are there any opportunities there? Is there a project you may be working on with the port of Monrovia, Freeport of Monrovia, but it's also under the National Port Authority, correct?
Well, yeah, actually, the company, Blandford Thompson International Consulting, our company, as you know, is working very closely with the National Port Authority. We're very excited that they have retained us to do a number of things. One is to help expand the port. There are a number of ports. One is Port Buchanan. The National Port Authority in Monrovia has been commissioned under a concession agreement to APM Terminal, but there are other ports that need special attention to bring them up to international standards. And we are right now looking at how we can help with the needs assessment of Port Buchanan and other ports that are in Liberia. You have the Greenville Port, Harper Port, and Buchanan. So those are the ports that we are going to be focusing on to help increase trade. We do know that as you and I visited Buchanan Port last year, the opportunities are endless just in terms of the location. We know that Assessor Metal Steel is they're exporting iron ore out of Buchanan. And so we're looking at ways in which we can increase the port capacity so we can have other exports coming out of Buchanan, Greenville, and Harper, but with a particular focus on Buchanan. You also might know that through the launching of the National Port Authority Scholarship Program with the Houston International Trade Development Council and Blandford Thompson Consulting, we are looking at ways to help build the capacity of the National Port Authority staff through short-term training programs, as well as through academic or educational scholarship programs to help strengthen their academic skills, both in business, logistics, leadership development, and so forth. So the scholarship program was just launched in Houston a few weeks ago, and we're very
Right.
excited about it.
What are our goals as far as fundraising? And are we thinking of uh, students abroad? Actually, Liberian students coming to Houston or somewhere else in the United States, or are we talking about maybe funding their education in country? What are we mostly looking at?
Well, as you know from our discussions, the big priority is we do have a fundraising initiative underway currently, is to find ways to strengthen Liberians who are in Liberia. And so that
Right.
means, for example, if there is a short-term certification course in logistics or supply chain management, then we would, at the official time of the launch of the scholarship program, look at opportunities to help in a competitive way announce to the community they have an opportunity to apply for a scholarship program. So it could be a short-term certification at one of the universities in Liberia or through a private sector firm. There are specific requirements in terms of eligibility that are posted on the HITD website as it relates to how you can apply and when you can apply. We've not officially launched the program yet. We'll be on the ground in a couple of weeks, and we hope to get further direction from the NPA chief, Madam Diana Nebo.
I was listening to your memoirs a moment ago. Very interesting and very exciting. There's a lot of things you did. Is there anything more about your memoir? We can go back to that. Are we leaving anything out?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, there's a whole story. You might remember you came to Atlanta and had a chance to share with you my story, which I think for young brown and black and yellow girls and boys all over the world, you can learn from my journey. So I think that the one thing I wanted to share was really a little bit more about my experience at Cornell and then my experience as a Rotarian scholarship. So I'll just take a minute to read just a little bit more about my memoirs for
Okay.
our listening public.
Please.
All right, thank you. So Cornell influenced my life and my journey toward my diplomatic post. In addition to
Let me just say, Cornell influenced your journey. Is that what you're trying to tell us?
more
Okay. Tell us.
specifically, more
Tell us.
specifically, yeah, the Africana Studies Center on the
Okay.
Cornell
So
campus.
you actually was a student at Cornell.
I was a student at Cornell, but this impact on my life started at the age of about 14, 15. My mom had a home on the campus, and so my
Okay.
after school programs were literally
Okay.
on the Africana Studies Center. I would just float in there because there was something drawing me to that center, and it changed my life. So
Elaborate. Go ahead.
thank you. So, Cornell, in addition to love and home values I received on the home front and my conviction to help change the world, it was also my learning environment that would expose and shape me at a very early age. Issues like world hunger and poverty, intellectualism, African inventors, women leaders, political movements, and scholars, and so much more influenced my way of thinking. In particular, my experiences and exposure at Cornell's Africana Studies Center in Ithaca, the first of its type in America, a think tank, a laboratory of ideas where Black thought leaders would debate and discuss for hours. This powerful and unique experience I found intriguing, which would ultimately change the course of my life forever. As my mother worked at Cornell, we lived not too far from the campus. So by the age of 14, I was influenced, as I mentioned, by Africans and Pan Africanists studying and teaching at the Africana Studies Center, where I heard Gosa, Kiswahili, and other African languages.
Did you
I,
learn? Did you learn any of them?
I learned a little bit of Kiswahili and I
Oh, okay.
experienced African food
All
and
right.
culture,
All right.
fashion, art, history, and developed an appreciation for the continent as a whole. So, as an inquisitive young girl, you can only imagine. I found myself yearning to become more like these intellectuals, to learn about them, sitting in classrooms, hanging around Africana Studies Center student lounges, and wandering about the campus seeking something new and exciting. I knew I was a bit different. I also knew there had to be more to my brown skin and curly hair and green eyes that was unique and special that the world did not want me to know. There was something else that I just didn't know what it was. So, as I had been taught about slavery in middle school and even high school and seen Tarzan and Jane movies, I was soon to discover that African Americans were so much more than our slave history. Well, I later learned that Thomas Blandford, my name, was the slave owner of the Blandford family. I realized that I was much more than a slave name. I wanted to know about my African roots, as it was clear by the color of my skin, I had white blood running through my veins. But who was I as an African? In my readings and listenings to esteemed Black scholars in lecture halls and small meetings in dorms called Ujima on Cornell's campus, I soon learned that Black people had a rich history. We were descendants of queen mothers, Zoes, African kings and tribal chiefs, and even African presidents. We were taught in public schools that Africa was the dark continent, when in fact it was the continent of the future, the bright continent of hope and possibilities. So, Val, from there, I said, what's next for me? And I said, there must be more than Ithaca, New York. And so I applied for a Rotarian scholarship in 1974 and said, I'm going to find my way to the continent. So I owe a debt of gratitude to the Rotarian Club of Ithaca, New York, for the opportunity to study and live in Liberia in 1974 and 1975. Little did I know at the time God had already placed a passion for Africa in my life. It was just now the prayers of my ancestors were moving me into another direction. So when I applied for the scholarship in 1974, my mom and family drove me to Canada. I hopped on a Pan Am flight, flew for 24 hours, and when I reached the ground, you can only imagine the tears in my eyes soiled the land. And I said, I'm home. I am home. So for the next 12 months, I spent in Liberia. I taught school in Nimba County in Yakapa, Area B School, and I attended the University of Liberia. It was at that time that I really learned about the American Colonization Society and the whole transatlantic trade slave, and how many Liberians and other Africans left from Liberia to the United States and then to the American Colonization Society, those that went back as freed men and women. It's just a fascinating story about the
So
history of
so
Liberia.
so prior to you traveling to Liberia on a scholarship, knew nothing about the history.
I didn't know the deep richness of the history. I just knew I needed. Listen, when Rotary said, "Do you want to go to Switzerland or do you want to go to
Right.
Liberia?" I said, "Well, I know enough about my white ancestry. I want to know who I am as an African." I said, "Get me on the next plane to Liberia." I did not know the deep history at the age of 17. I did
It's
not know.
deep and rich. There's no
It is.
question about that.
It is, no question. So
So,
I had a great experience and it changed my life.
okay. So, is there anything more to the memoirs?
Well, I think
I
when you
mean,
read the memoirs, which will hopefully be published
it,
sometime in 2024, these are just snippets of my life experience. I think what's important for America to know is that Black America is that we
right,
too have a home, and that home is Liberia. It's important to know that while President Obama was the first African American president of the United States, there were 10 African American presidents of Liberia, the founding fathers. The first one, Joseph Jenkins Roberts. Most
right,
people, when you and I share that story wherever we go all over the world, and most people cannot believe there were 10 free Black men who left America, who became presidents of an African nation, the first independent nation on the continent of Africa. So there's something to be very proud of. And I think
right.
that African Americans owe it to themselves to understand and learn their history.
I have to let you know, I've read your memoirs, so and it's a great read. And some at some point you need to put it on a hardback. Take it out of the magazine, put it on a hardback copy, so you can sell it around the world. And at that point, I'm sure you'll have plenty to add to it because you're creating more as you live and as you go. There's plenty more left in of you for the motherland, and I'm very sure of that. So, is there anything more? I mean, I know there's more, right?
Well, just something brief. And you're right, there is a part two. And my sister and you and others encouraged me, like you said, to
Okay,
go ahead and get her done. So for me, what's next is to tell the stories, the real other
the
stories of
complete
my life,
story.
the new stories.
Gotcha.
This is just the first blush. My heart beats for Africa, particularly how my life was changed by my experience in Liberia. There's so much more to tell, so much more to say. And working with Judy, who is one of our producers on right now, we're so excited. She's also encouraged me to make sure to get this done so that people can hear my voice and understand my journey. Cynthia L.
Absolutely.
Blandford, memoirs, My Heart Beats for Africa, How a Love for the Motherland led me to a life of purpose. It has changed my life completely. And you and I are on this journey together. It's going to be an incredible next step as we talk about how do we leave our legacy, because there's a legacy to be left for our children and our grandchildren. This is just the beginning.
There's no question about that. What do you have? What message do you have for our viewers?
Well, I know the time is coming short, so I want to say thanks to Val and to Judy for this opportunity. We're so excited. I'm an executive producer of iFocus Podcast, just like Val Thompson. We expect to come back to you, and be sure to subscribe to iFocus Podcast, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast app. Please be sure to check us out on Instagram, other social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're so excited to tell our story. We have so much more to share with you. Be sure to check in. Until the next time, take care.